And good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. My guest this evening is local artist Bill Duncan. Bill,
hello, Pete.
welcome. Hi, buddy. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to be here, Pete. Good
Thanks
to be here.
Thanks for coming down. Thanks for coming down.
My pleasure.
So, Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been an artist.
Okay, well, I guess it goes all the way back to my childhood because I could always kind of draw.
Okay.
My mom was kind of an artist. My dad was a carpenter who could build a house without blueprints. So there's a certain creativeness there. So I guess I got some of that DNA to be able to draw things. And as a kid, if you can draw pictures, other kids were like, oh, cool, you could draw Donald Duck. Oh, cool, you could draw Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
And I could do that. And there's an interesting story I can remember because I always took art in high school.
Okay.
But I wasn't a student of the history of art. I like to draw. I'm really not a student of the history of it. And so my art teacher didn't agree with me along those lines, and so he gave me an F one semester in art. My mother was like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean my son failed art? He can draw. And so that was an interesting juxtaposition there. So I got through that, and then as I moved along, I didn't really realize that you could ever make a career out of art.
Okay.
I joined the Air Force, and I thought, I'll draw posters for the Air Force.
Aha.
Well, that's not how the Air Force looks at the recruits. It's like, you can do electronics and things like that.
Yeah, right.
So that didn't work out all that well. But eventually, I had always used along the lines, I had several different occupations, and every time I would change my occupation, I'd go to a company and I'd see unique things about the people that I was working with. I was brand new to the company or brand new to the job, and I would see, oh, this guy's pretty cool, and I'd draw little cartoons of him, and I'd put them on a board, and somebody would say, who did that? It's like, oh, it's a new guy. And all of a sudden I was accepted because you could do something they couldn't do.
Right.
And that was my in. So, I mean, I've always done cartoons like this.
Okay.
All right, which are, this is a group I belong to, a reenactment group, and drew cartoons of them. We made a calendar out of it. There's a whole bunch of different things on here with different drawings and cartoons. Cartoons are fun to do. It's not serious,
No.
but it's a lot of fun.
There you go.
And eventually, my wife, whom I met, said, you can draw, you can paint? I said, well, yeah. She said, well, why don't you pursue that? And I was like, well, how are you supposed to do that? And so she said, you should take some art lessons. I'm like, okay, but I sort of think I already know how to draw, so what do I want to take lessons for? And but I did, and I got to know some art teachers along the way, and got involved with the whole art community then. And I joined some art leagues and began to paint seriously, not just cartoons.
There you go.
And I started out painting watercolors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a kind of an introductory level. But quickly realized, well, with watercolors, you don't get an opportunity to make a mistake and correct it.
Right.
You do it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. You got to start all over again. And not that cool as far as I was concerned. And then along came acrylics. And acrylics are very forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
You can paint something. If you make a mistake, you let it dry and you paint over it.
Wow.
Okay, so it's like kind of this big giant canvas. Oh, I got it all wrong. All right, let it dry and paint over it and you start all over again. So acrylics are really kind of fun. There's different versions of those. There's a liquid acrylic and there's a acrylics that you paint as like an oil painting. Oil paintings are the most traditional. They've been around for hundreds and hundreds or thousands of years, I guess. And fun to work with. You just have to give them the opportunity to dry before you can make any changes to it.
Speaking of art,
yes,
we have some pieces behind us.
Ah, yes.
Let's talk.
All right.
So let's start right here.
Okay.
What do we got?
So that is a pastel.
Okay.
And pastels are like a chalk. And again, not tremendously forgiving.
Okay.
You can't. For example, if I did this picture in pastels and said, "Well, I don't like it. I'm going to do it over," you don't have the opportunity to do it over. You just throw that away and you start again. But they have a very blending quality.
Okay.
You can blend the things together. It's a lot like watercolors. You get to do it once, and that's it. That's a picture that I did up in Maine. It's of a little lobsterman's house that kind of caught my eye, and it's kind of a sketchy way of doing things with pastels. Some artists are very good with pastels. They can be very creative and very detailed with. So that's an example of pastel art.
Okay.
This one here,
yeah,
that's oil painting. That's oils.
All right.
This is in my backyard.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
We have a mini farm in our backyard in Cromwell, and this is Norman's barn. Norman is a cow.
Aha.
and Sassy's barn. Sassy is a donkey. So we have in our backyard a donkey and a cow. This is their home, their little barn. And one winter I was looking at, the white snow and all the starkness around it, and the red barns kind of stood out. So I said, well, let me stand out there with my boots and overalls and do an oil painting of the barns. And oil paintings, again, are kind of fluid. They're kind of nice. You can blend it very well. You just have to be a little more patient with how they dry.
Yep.
And that sort of thing. Down here.
I'm going to say we're going to go
Yep.
down here. Okay.
This is acrylic, but it's a liquid acrylic.
Okay.
Which means it's very flowing. Mm-hmm. Ordinarily, if you paint in regular acrylics, it will be very much like an oil painting.
Right.
You can do, unless you look at it really close, you couldn't tell the difference, too much difference between the oil and acrylics. The flowing acrylics, you can see it's kind of like dripping things and all that sort of stuff. So, but it's kind of fun because you can splatter it and you can do interesting things with the liquid acrylics. Okay, but again, it dries really fast. If I wanted to, I just paint over the whole thing and start again.
And I believe we have one more behind you.
One more. This is a collage.
Okay.
And a collage is basically you take a whole bunch of images from magazines,
Okay.
from books, from wherever you can find an image, and you create a painting or a piece of art from that. So this is a version of the American flag.
Yeah.
And if you look at it really close, there's a strawberry, there's a Maserati, there's a lobster over here in the red. In the white, there's the bottom of a vodka bottle, which we were talking about a little bit earlier.
There you go.
Okay, a watch and a beluga whale.
All right.
Okay, and the blue is whatever you can, a sky, a smartwatch, a bunch of other blue images, stamped out stars in white, and you can create an entire piece of art from different images of different colors. a flag is kind of a, there was a famous artist whose name was Jasper Johns.
Okay.
And he did similar things with the American flag. His was mostly paintings rather than collage. But that's kind of fun and interesting to do.
Nice. Now, out of all the paintings that you've done, do you have a favorite?
Oh, that's a good question.
You have a favorite type of painting?
My wife does.
Does she?
Oh, yeah. So she wouldn't let me bring them down tonight.
Okay.
You can't bring those here. I don't want to lose them. I don't want. Okay.
What are they?
They're scenes of our neighborhood where we live.
Okay.
And she likes those to my, whatever the word is.
To your dismay?
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Pete.
I'm using big words.
Yes, you are using big words.
Great.
To my dismay, she would not let me sell it or sell them, and that's fine. I don't. When I make a painting or a piece of art, it's not like, oh, I want to hang on to this for the rest of my life. It's like you sort of paint something that you hope that somebody else will enjoy and maybe purchase. And maybe we can get to talk about that maybe in the second half.
Absolutely.
But what do I like? Actually, I like doing collages the most.
Why's that?
It's more challenging.
Aha.
Okay. When I did this painting, for example, I saw this scene. This is exactly how it looks, right? And I saw it and I said, oh, that will make a great painting. So I went outside in my overalls and my hat and my gloves and everything that stood out in the winter. And essentially, I describe it as I'm copying what I see. You know, it goes from my eye down my arm to the paintbrush.
Yeah. And then there you go.
And there you go. So, and that's oil, which is fun, but I'm not that patient of a person, so I'd rather do acrylics, which dries faster.
Because they're quick.
Yeah.
Bill, would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Absolutely, Pete.
We'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with local artist Bill Duncan. Bill, welcome back.
Glad to be here, Pete.
Thanks
Thank you
for
very much.
sticking around, my friend.
Oh, my pleasure.
So we were talking about art in the first segment, and we were talking a little bit about some of your favorite artwork that you've done, and let's continue that conversation to open up this segment.
Sure. The interesting thing, once my wife said, you should paint, you should do some paintings and bring them to galleries.
Okay.
And like, I wasn't really, kind of, you know, it was fun to do.
Right.
I enjoyed doing all these things. But I wasn't sure about getting involved in actually trying to bring them to galleries and to display them. Mm-hmm. But I got involved with it. And the interesting thing about that whole process was, I don't know if you know anything about how art galleries operate or how they work.
Don't they work on like consignment? If you like drop off a piece, then the piece sells and you get paid.
Exactly.
I think.
Yes, bingo.
I think.
It's a 50-50 proposition.
Okay.
Okay. So and that in some respects is fair enough. They have this brick and mortar building.
Yep.
Bunch of artists there. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they draw in a whole bunch of people who come in and say, wow, look at all these paintings that you couldn't get from your house or from your yard. So they're giving you a format. They're giving you a place to show your paintings. And hopefully they try to promote, well, they can't promote individual people, but they try to get people to say, take a look around, see what's here.
Right.
Okay? But it's a little bit like, you don't realize at first, like, well, wait a minute, if I put $100 on my painting, I get 50 and you get 50. And at first you go like, well, you wouldn't sell it otherwise. So
Right.
it seems to work out pretty good that way. Other places do have a system where they say, you pay X amount of dollars a month to display in our gallery, and you get whatever you sell.
Okay.
Okay, so there's two different ways basically how that's done. And with the gallery owners, the only tripping point that I ever had was, you come in and you go, here's what I have to sell. And they go, well, we don't like that.
Great.
Yeah, great, okay,
Yeah,
so
I'll be back.
how about this one? No, we don't like that one either.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for coming in.
Yeah, right.
So they're being the judge and the jury right off the bat.
Fine.
That was a little discouraging. For example, once I got involved in the whole art world, I went with a fellow artist up to Newburyport, Massachusetts,
Sure.
to a gallery, and I brought some paintings that I thought were like, these are good. And the gallery person, I don't know if it was the owner or not, but the gallery person said to one of mine, like, well, this is too kitsch. I actually had to go look up the word kitsch because I didn't really know what it meant.
What's it mean?
It means that it's too common, too like, oh, that's so typical. Like,
There's too many of these.
there's too many of this sort of
Gotcha.
thing. And it's like, okay.
Great, thanks.
And so then I brought another one up, and she goes, well, we don't do blue. We don't do blue?
You don't do
Well,
the
blue
color
is a
blue?
primary color.
Right.
Anyway, so she rejected the things that I brought up. But to my satisfaction, both of those pieces, when I brought them back home to Connecticut and put them in a show, they both sold.
There you go.
So much for the judgment of a gallery owner.
Right.
You know, and so I don't know that they may know their clientele, but to say, I don't think this will sell in my gallery, I don't know that you really know that or not. So some of it is who you know, or you know, if they know the artist has somehow become established. Say, you could bring anything in. You could bring like a really bad painting, but if it's somebody that you know, and they think, oh, they'll know Joe Schmo, this is Joe Schmo's painting.
Right.
They'll buy it. They put it in. But it's like, Bill Duncan, well, we don't know who you are, and so we're going to judge it a little more critically. So that was a little interesting, shall we say, in the art world.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite stories that stick out with your years as an artist?
Yeah, there's a bunch along those lines. One of them was like I entered an art show, and the whole art scene is about being in art shows and in galleries.
Okay.
And so art shows there's hundreds of them around.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was going to be the juror of the art show, because what they do, what art leagues do or art societies do is they put on an art show and then they get someone to jury the paintings that come in. Like hundreds of artists submit paintings.
Okay.
And they pick someone who's supposed to be an expert in art to say, this is good, I'll take that one. I don't like that one, that's out. I like that one, and I like that one, I don't like those. And so I got one of my paintings into the show, and it was in Granby. It was the only painting that sold in the whole show. So I thought that was
Wow.
pretty
Cool.
good, right? That was pretty good.
Cool.
And the only comment was made was, "Oh, well, you wouldn't have got into the show if it wasn't for me." Like, what?
Great.
Wait a minute. Yeah,
Thanks.
great. Okay. So the art world is kind of like, what's the word I want to use? Snobby. Help me out with the word here, Pete.
Which word, Bill?
That goes along with snobby, kind of like
Snooty.
Snooty, and it's very competitive.
Right.
I've done a lot of reading of artists' colonies, like the old Lime artist colony from the 19th century, the New York art scene from the 40s and 50s, Jackson Pollock, Bill de Kooning, all those kind of guys, and they seem to be kind of like cohesive. They would kind of debate and discuss art, but they didn't try to, cut the legs out from under each other.
Right.
And I didn't find that in the modern day, which would be like, I was mostly involved in the late 90s and early 2000s art world scene. And it seemed to be more like a competitive. I was in a brick gallery in Essex, and I was selling paintings fairly well,
All right.
and was criticized by a couple of the artists nearby because there were all these little booths
Yeah.
that you got. And the artist said, "Well, you're selling your stuff so cheap, that's why you're selling it." It's like, well, I don't want to hang on to it. So,
Yeah, right.
So, it was very tempting to say, well, you've got $1,000 on this thing and it's still sitting there.
Yeah, right.
And it
Exactly.
probably will continue to sit there.
Exactly.
So it's kind of funny how they view other artists. They're like some sort of envy going on, maybe, if they think you're doing well. If you sell things, they're not happy that you're selling and they're not. And it's too bad. I love to paint, but the art world itself, in terms of like being in galleries and being in shows, was kind of difficult.
Now, time-wise, what is the easiest painting to paint, and what is the hardest painting to paint?
You are the man with the questions. That's excellent. That's an excellent question.
And I was going to say, is it one of these?
Yeah. Clearly, the longest one to do would be this one,
Okay, what's that?
because it's oil and it dries slow. And if you say, "Oh, I don't like the way this looks," you have to wait for it to dry a little
dry
bit
and then-
and go over it.
Oh, God.
So that's the slowest process.
Okay.
The fastest process would be
This one.
This one. Okay. Because even if you get it kind of wrong, you can kind of adjust it right away. Pastels, like that one there, again, you have to get it right the first time, otherwise you start over. Okay. The collage,
Yep.
everything's glued together. It's
Right.
just all these pieces are glued. And if you got it wrong, you glue another piece over it.
There you go.
And fix it. So, slowest, quickest, actually, probably, I think the most fun is these
Is the
guys.
collage?
Yeah. The interesting thing about any piece of artwork, I'm a big fan of abstract painting,
Sure.
but most people go like, "What is that?"
Right.
Right? Jackson Pollock. What is that anyway? It's just this stuff. I don't see anything there.
Norman Rockwell.
Well, yeah, Norman Rockwell. I mean, clearly the guy's a fantastic artist. He gets put into the category, quite frankly, of an illustrator, because he's illustrating a particular scene, and he is the perfect person to put an emotion into a picture.
Yeah.
I mean, he does it better than anybody ever. And it's like, it borders on a photograph because he's that good of an illustrator.
Oh, yeah. We've got a little bit more time left. What else would you like to mention?
I think that one of the things I found interesting was that you can, and I kind of compare it to sports.
Okay.
You can be a Ted Williams hitter,
Yes.
which might be arguably the best hitter of all time, right? Doesn't mean he could teach you how to hit. Some of the best coaches and the best managers were never superb players, right?
Right.
They were like, pretty good.
Yeah.
But they knew the techniques of, here's what you have to do to hit the ball properly. So they're excellent teachers. I found it's the same thing with art. I mean, I know some painters, because I met a lot of different artists. They're just like fantastic artists. Fantastic, what they call colorists. They choose the right colors to do at the right thing. But they can't teach somebody else how to do it. You know, they paint, this is a great picture.
Yeah.
Well, how do I do that?
I don't know.
I don't know. This is what you do. You just do it.
Exactly.
Well, you know, what I could do, you couldn't do, and what you can do,
You can.
I can't do.
Right.
So that was an interesting observation. And paintings have evolved. I don't have one example here, but a lot of paintings nowadays, the modern paintings, don't use a frame.
Okay.
They have what they call a wraparound canvas, like that.
Sure.
And it's usually thicker. And so you don't require a frame.
Gotcha.
That's an advantage to the artist, because now that's $30 I don't have to spend on a frame.
Right. Exactly. Well, Bill Duncan, we're about to run out of time. I want to thank you for
Okay.
coming down. We'll see you again soon.
Oh, I hope so, Pete.
Thank you,
I
my
hope
friend.
so.
See you soon.
Thank you very much.
On behind of Bill Duncan, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.